when Boris is forced to resign, 14,000 members of the public wrote directly to central office saying, "What are you doing?" Boris is a popular guy. That's the purpose of the campaign, to bring him back. The interesting thing about Boris is that he is the only politician in my lifetime that people actively like. All the other ones, like David Cameron, Tony Blair, or whatever, were people that you had to sell on doorsteps. Boris, on the other hand, is recognizable. He's the guy that you want to go to the pub with. And so what's happened, in my view, is that Boris has enemies because he's essentially the Mozart versus Salieri in the Amadeus movie, where somebody is a virtuoso. He's so much more gifted than the rest and the people around him. And that brings an enormous amount of the mediocre or the relatively talented to look at that bright, shining star and do everything they possibly can to bring him down. There's a Greek tragedy element to this, in my view.
But is there a risk, do you think, if the Tory membership are to take a view that's opposing the Tory parliamentary party and also what sort of voters in the country think, that this could be a sort of Jeremy Corbyn moment for your party? You know, electing a leader that MPs don't like anymore, lots of MPs don't like anymore, and the public have switched off.
Well, there are a couple of things. The first one is that the Partygate story more or less died the day after the local election, where the Labour Party made virtually no gains outside of London. In other words, a lot of the ire that was generated by this manufactured story essentially showed us that Boris was much more popular than people expected in the London bubble, as it were. The Conservative Party, like any institution, is better being more democratic than being less democratic. And I think one of the things to bear in mind as well is that there was a vote of no confidence that Boris won, and the rules of the game. The rules of the games were, if you win that, there won't be another challenge for 12 months. And then people came around and said, we need to get rid of him. And if he doesn't resign, we'll change the rules. Now, any game without any rules, or with rules that are changeable on a whim, is not a game worth playing. And I think that that's what we're trying to say with the campaign. By the way, the campaign is just people reacting. What I was saying yesterday, and I think that's a very important point, when Tony Blair resigned, many people cheered. When Cameron left, people shrugged their shoulders. When Theresa May resigned, there was a massive sigh of relief for most of us. And then when Boris is forced to resign, 14,000 members of the public wrote directly to central office saying, what are you doing? We like this guy. Is he competent? That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we don't want to become an Italian-style republic where we have a new government every year and we don't really know what kind of backroom deals are being done and why people are being promoted. We do live in a democracy and we'd like to see more democracy rather than less.
Well, has the campaign spoken to Boris? Is it licensed by Boris? Do you think Boris wants to come back?
No, I don't know. We haven't spoken to him. I haven't spoken to him. Actually, I was brought into this story because of the Pincher story. I was actually happily on holiday, to be honest. And I didn't say very much in the initial stages of this story because I had written the piece I wrote in 2017 and there wasn't really much more to add to this.
In which he described an unwanted advance by Chris Pincher, which was then reported to the Conservative Party. He was investigated under Theresa May and then
but he was brought, no.
sanction.
So, but this is, I think this is the important point. He was not investigated. Certainly there was no internal inquiry that I could recognise. I wasn't asked anything about anyone or from anyone in Conservative Party Central Office. They didn't ask me what my story was. What did happen very quickly after he resigned is that the CPS met Pincher at the Carlton Club, again, funnily enough, and the CPS said, well, Alex is not going to press any charges. And so the Conservative Party grandees went, brilliant. We can bring him back in. Not morally, the guy is unsuitable, you know. And so then he was reinstated by Theresa May. And it's important to say that Pincher served under 3 prime ministers. I think that that's also a reason why I took the line I took in the article I wrote in the National Review in the US, where I say that the Pincher story felt much more like a pretext. Everybody in all the political parties knew about Pincher, and there's this mutually assured destruction type of agreement in politics where we have our Chris Pinchers and you've got your Keith Vazes, right? Let's keep stum about all of this. We'll try and make sure that we brush everything under the carpet, and so long as you don't talk about our sexual deviance, we won't talk about yours. And so the pretext of getting rid of Boris in the way that he was dealt with is the thing that I found so shocking.
And so you don't think Boris Johnson is uniquely culpable for the Chris Pincher affair, then?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Theresa May brought him back. You know, Brandon Lewis, the chairman of the Conservative Party at the time, brought him back as well. I mean, this is the reason why when Boris was removed and people showed this manufactured righteousness about his apparent lie, you know, I just felt, no, we've got to do something about this, and we can't just have a few men in grey suit putting a bullet in the back of our prime minister's head every so often. I mean, if you think about it, by the end of this year, we will have had 4 prime ministers in 6 years. That's an average of 1 year and 6 months. It's literally getting close to an Italian-style republic.
Just before I let you go, Alex, provided Boris Johnson isn't on the ballot, and there's no sign that he's going to get there, I don't think, unless your campaign is successful, who do you prefer, Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak?
That's a difficult one. I think neither of the two, whilst they might very well be competent, have the je ne sais quoi, as it were, to win in those seats. Before I go, I think the important thing to realize is that the character of Boris is very different. He is a presidential-style character in a parliamentary system. In other words, the voters, in particular in the north of England, who voted for the first time for the Conservative Party, didn't vote for the party, but they voted for the individual. And that's the reason why the dynamics are so different.